And right now I've just got a blank screen. Is that right?
We're live now. Okay. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. I'm still not exactly sure how this all works all that well, but I know that in the past I've had some problems with questions. So if for some reason you can't get your question to go through, you can go here. I'm going to add the link here when it decides to come up. And that is to the Facebook event, so you can actually add questions over there as well as to the actual event page here on Google+, and I will track it down and find it so you can ask your question. So all the authors, I'm not sure what everybody else can see. You have to make another account to see what people are seeing. So I guess I'll just do this via question, and we switch back to the questions here, and just do it that way. So the first question is for Amy, so let me find her down in here, and I'll select the question. And can you see the question or no?
I can.
Okay, yay.
Do I need to type anything, or do I just answer it?
No, you just talk now, and I'll just sit here and hold the book
okay.
up. So I feel useful.
Okay. How did I come up with the idea for After the End? I usually come up with my ideas starting with a person, and for After the End, I saw this teenage girl, living in the wilderness, living off the land, in this kind of post-apocalyptic landscape. But I didn't really want to write a post-apocalyptic book. And I wanted her to be a real kind of survivalist. And I was trying to think about how I could have somebody be a survivalist in this day and age, and it still be today, and the world be as it is. And so that's how I came up with the idea for Juno, which is the lead character in After the End, because she is living in the Alaskan wilderness with her clan, who have seceded from society for a certain reason. They're hiding a secret. And they've told all the children in the clan that there's been a World War III and that the world has been destroyed. They're hiding out from these kind of Mad Max-style brigands who don't actually exist. So basically, in my mind, I just had the image of this survivalist type of girl in the wilderness, but in today's world, having to figure out why she has been hidden away. Their whole clan has been hidden away for the last 30 years. So for me, it was starting with a character.
Okay, so we're done with that question, and let me figure out how I'm going to do this here. Trying to show the book and keep my hands free. It's not working out so well. Let me get, okay, where are the questions? Here. 222. Okay, so the next question is for Aprilynne. And the question is, how did you get interested in this particular genre?
For Sleep No More, I'm assuming you're reading horror because this is my first real horror. And
I'm thinking you're talking about maybe YA is usually what they mean. Like, why do you write for YA?
YA I kind of fell into, and I think that it's a really natural niche for me. I got my agent with a different book that was for the adult audience, and when she sent it out, over half of the rejections that came back said, this really feels more like a YA. So even when I was trying to write adult, it's still just, I apparently naturally have a young adult voice, and I have always thought teenagers were cool and fun, and people are always like, just wait till your kids become teenagers. And I'm like, I know, won't it be great? And they're like, that's not what I meant, you know. So I just think teenagers are awesome, and apparently my voice really just naturally gravitates that direction.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I guess this where did my mouse go? Okay, this question is, I guess, for everybody. It's going to pop up on screen here. So I'll just like bring everybody up individually, I guess, since not everybody's on at the same time, which is weird. So would you like to answer first, Aprilynne? It says, do you know how you want to end a book when you first start writing?
I am a big planner, and so not only do I always know, but like I have to know. The ending is the part that I really have to know. I don't even really need to know the beginning. The beginning I tend to rewrite like 6 times, but I am very insistent in my personal writing process that I need to know the ending, or else I don't see a point in starting a story.
Okay. And Amy?
I am the opposite of Aprilynne. I am a pantser. And I come up with, like I just said, after the end, I had an image in my mind, and I take that image. I had to work with it just a little bit to kind of figure out what was going on. But I take that image or the scene that's in my mind and just go with it. So I have no idea what's going to happen at the end. Usually I know that my main characters will still be alive. And that, you know, that most of the love interest things kind of work out. Some of them don't, but so I usually have happy endings with a bit of sadness. But besides that, no, I have no idea how things are going to end. It's always a surprise, even for me. And usually I don't know that some things that I'm at the end of the book until I get to that actual scene. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I should end here. And that's when I'm done. So I'm the opposite. I'm a pantser.
And Danielle?
I like to know. Am I on there?
Yeah,
I like
you're
to know
good.
the beginning. I like to know the beginning and the end, and the middle can be a hot mess. But I like to know where I'm going. But I also really have to nail down the first few chapters in order to know where I'm going. Like I have to know who the characters are and what's going on with them. I have to nail that down before I can go anywhere, and then I have to know the end so I can actually get started. So yeah, I like to. So I'm not a pantser.
Kimberly?
And I fall probably somewhere in between everyone else in the sense that I generally know about where I want it to start. Like, I know the beginning pretty well. I know about where I want it to end. And I know some big scenes along the way, what I call kind of big plot points. And so I use those to kind of guide me along the way as I'm writing, because I am pantsing it also. But I can veer off. Like, I let myself kind of wherever the story leads me along the way. And sometimes my ending is the ending that I originally started with, and sometimes it surprises me and it's something else entirely.
Okay. The next question is for Danielle.
What is that? Oh, how did I come up with the idea for Dorothy Must Die? For me, the entire thing came from wondering what happened to Dorothy when she went back to Kansas. And for me, I thought, if you were this girl who was a hero and had magic and had these amazing things happen to you when you were in Oz, why would you want to go back? So from there, I just imagined what she would do. Like, would she become petulant? Would she become... She just became a little bit darker, and from there, all of Oz became a little darker. And when she gets back, she takes over and starts draining the magic out of Oz. So she kind of goes dark, and then the rest of Oz went dark with her.
Okay, the next question is for everybody. So I'll let you go first, Danielle. It's, what kind of research did you do for your book?
For me, I just read all of the Baum books. There are 14 that he wrote, and I read all of those, and that was it. The rest is from my imagination. I tried to take what I liked about it and kind of warp it to my own sensibility. I took the things that the characters were searching for in the original and made those things to be the things that kind of corrupted them. So the Tin Man was searching for his heart, and once he finds it, he kind of goes the other direction. He goes too far in that direction. He becomes obsessed with Dorothy. So and then the Lion is now kind of steroidy, and the Tin Man is I already did that. And then the Scarecrow is a mad scientist. So the things that we once loved about these characters are now the things that are kind of their Achilles heel.
I really need to read faster. All right, Kimberly?
With the taking, I did primarily the research I did was into kind of alien conspiracy theories, because her dad, when Kira, my main character, vanishes, she disappears for 5 years and comes back with no memory of where she's been. She thinks it's been one night, it's been 5 years, and her dad has turned into kind of this drunken conspiracy theorist who thinks she was abducted by aliens. And so I did a lot of research into kind of alien conspiracy theories, and it was really fascinating to kind of delve into that world of the people who really get excited about conspiracy theories and who really take this world very seriously, and also to kind of explore sites that are very in that world, you know, alien abduction sites. Not just Area 51, but there are so many places in the world that are considered abduction sites. And so it was fascinating to kind of delve into that and to look at all the theories around presidential involvement and national security involvement, those kinds of things. So it was pretty fascinating.
And Amy?
Researching for After the End, this was actually kind of hard. My first series was set in Paris, which I've lived here for so long, and I'm so interested in it. I love it so much that I knew it like the back of my hand and really didn't have to do any research. I just used all of the places that I had lived in or knew or hung out at. Needed no research. This time I, for some strange reason, set the first part of After the End in the only state in the United States that I have never been in. So I had to look on Google and do like Google Earth and Google Maps and like try to figure out what the landscape looked like. And I had to research what plants and animals, and I had to do a lot of research for this one. And didn't even realize it. I probably wouldn't have based it in Alaska if I had realized how much research I was going to do. So I quickly moved the action from Alaska to places that I actually knew. But the Alaska bit did take a bit of research. And then the second, well, most of the rest of the book, but it's part 2. Juno and Miles, the love interest in the story, are on a road trip from Seattle. It ends up in Salt Lake City. They're supposed to end up somewhere else, but Seattle starts Salt Lake City. And I started doing the same thing, Google Earthing, Google Mapping, and it was so far and so much terrain to have to describe that I ended up flying to Seattle and taking a road trip with my cousin. And so we drove the same routes that Juno and Miles took. And my cousin took notes while, my cousin drove while I took notes. And I used a few of the little kind of incidents that happened along the way with like strange people we met in the mountains and added that to the story. So that was the fun part of my research because I love doing road trips. The hard part of my research was trying to describe Alaska from Google and hoping that none of my readers actually live in Alaska so they won't figure out that I made a lot of mistakes.
Okay, who did I forget? April?
So I did a lot of research on oracles because whether you believe they're real or not, they were a real role in ancient Greece. And it seems like they're always like the side characters in stories. They're always the character who tells the main character whatever mysterious future-y things they do in their stories. And so I really wanted to make an oracle a main character in this book. And there are a lot of different kinds of oracles, and I got to really pick and choose. And then I did a ton of just weaving mythos from whole cloth a lot, like I did in my wig series. And so that part was just getting to make it up, but there was a lot that I took from actual real oracles, particularly the oracles at Delphi, which is where my sisterhood gets its name. But that was actually like a role that young girls played in ancient Greece, and it was a real thing, and possibly associated with the fumes that came up from the ground in that particular area, and may have been psychedelic. So really interesting. Also, like Amy, I set my book in a place I've never been, and it's actually a made-up city because I didn't want to take an actual small town and put a violent serial killer in it. That didn't feel very complimentary. So I made up my own town, but it is in the general Tulsa area of Kansas. And so I had to do some research and figure out what the landscape is like there. And I'm like, I went to Ellie Carter one day and I said, "Are there trees in Kansas?" And she was like, yeah, I said Kansas. I'm looking at Danielle and saying Kansas. It's Oklahoma.
You are saying Kansas. I never been to Kansas either, so yeah.
But yeah, I'm like, "Are there trees there?" And she's like, "Yes, there are trees." But I don't know that because I live in the desert.
My goodness. The next one is, what is a typical work day for you?
For me, I just write all the time. Maybe too much. I usually go get coffee, and then I read over what I wrote the day before, write until dinner time, and then just try to act like a normal person after that. What about you guys?
I used to write. Oh, sorry, I didn't know. I used to write in my bed, and would just sit and write, draft in my bed. I was comfortable there. I could take a nap really easily if I needed to. But I've started working outside of the house now because I don't know, well, you probably can imagine, but writing is a very solitary thing. And I would go for a whole week without seeing people, really. So I've actually started writing outside of the house now, either in a cafe, or there's this one cafe that I really like that is like a co-working cafe where everybody sits at tables with their headphones on, and all you have to do is buy a coffee once an hour, and you've like paid for your space. And we're all plugged into the internet. You've got your Wi-Fi connection and about 10 plugs. So it's everything that you need. And I've started working a lot there because I like having other people around me. It makes me feel like I'm not kind of a shut-in.
Good.
Yeah, I'm more the shut-in type. I stay in my house when I'm on a deadline or writing. I'm in my sweatpants and trying to squeeze in a shower on occasion. The UPS guy, I'm sure, thinks I'm an absolute, like, agoraphobic because I have things delivered, like gumballs, because I like to write chewing gumballs. And so I will have, like, these 20-pound boxes of Nerds gumballs because they're delicious delivered. And he comes to my house on a regular basis, and I'm in still, like, the same sweatpants I was in 2 days ago because, I have, like, my rotating 3 pair that are identical. And so I have, like, this writing uniform that I almost never take off, and it's, like, this ugly sweater that feels like I'm wearing a hug. And I sit, when I'm actually writing, I'm in my office almost all day. And my husband and I both work from home, but we're both in our offices, and we will text each other from our offices because we're both locked in all day. So it is kind of a shut-in mentality, I think.
Yeah, I feel like I'm way too close to my baristas, like, at the coffee shop, because it's like, you're the only person I get to see today, so I'm going to talk to you about whatever I can talk to you about. So, yeah, I get it.
I have 4 children, age 11 and under, and so when I started writing, I feel like even though my husband was in law school, and now he's not, I had more time. So my workday is like compressed into 4 hours between about 8 and 12, and I how to make the most of that because for the other 20 hours of the day, often including when I'm supposed to be sleeping, I'm thinking about what I am going to cram into those 4 hours. And so I think about plot all day long, and then I put my fingers to keys between 8 and 12. And I have to just turn everything off and just focus on the writing, or it's not going to get done. And I can generally get between 3,000 and 4,000 words written during that 4 hours because I've been thinking about it all day long.
The next question is actually for Kimberly here. Toss her back up here.
I see it. Will there be more Body Finder books? I get this question all the time. I'm definitely the 4th Body Finder book, which was Dead Silence, was the last book planned in that series. And I am always saying I'm a never say never kind of person because I definitely love that series and I love those characters. I feel like I wrapped it up in a way that I didn't want to tie such a neat little bow. I definitely left some threads open that if I wanted to write more, I could write more, but I was more thinking along the lines that I might write a spin-off at some point from another character's point of view. And I don't want to say which character necessarily in case somebody hasn't read the series because it would kind of spoil certain books. But I have given this thought. There may be a spin-off series at some point or spin-off books. And so I've thought about it. I'm not sure there will be more Violet and Jay books necessarily, but I have been definitely thinking about this a little bit. I love those. I love that world though, and I love writing books with the serial killer, kind of that perspective from the serial killer. I love that I like that kind of a series where it's not necessarily an arc over several books as much as it is kind of each individual mystery wraps up with each book. So it's kind of a non-answer.
The next question is, what is the hardest part of writing for you?
Should we just jump in? I'll start by
just jump in. Go for it.
The hardest part is I love writing, but for me the hardest part of writing every single book is the middle of the book. I'm just going to admit that I think writing the middle part of any book is absolutely the worst part. It's the part where I love writing the beginning of every book. I love writing the ending of every book. I love revising. I love editing. I hate writing the middle of a first draft. So for me, that is always the most painful part of a book.
I totally am about that first, or like hating that first round of revisions because I'm like you. I love to draft, and you turn it in and you're like, oh, my shiny baby, and then, like 2 months later, you get this like 10-page single-spaced letter telling you everything that sucks about your shiny baby. And that first letter, I mean, after that, the second letter, I feel like there's often, okay, well, you took care of the big things, here's the little things. But that first letter, it's just like a kick in the stomach, and it's just like, I mean, after I get my letter, I usually have to wait about 3 days before I can even start on the revision because I'm so, like, traumatized.
I don't know, for me, I really hate letting it go, like, at all. Like, I want to keep rewriting it, whatever I'm working on. It's like I want to take another pass. Like, I've turned in the last pass, and it's like I'm looking at my actual book, and I want to take another pass. Like, it could be a little bit better. There's something I meant to add. So for me, I think it's letting go.
That's hard for me, too. I'll keep tweaking something. Just individual words, I'll keep tweaking it. I just reread my my first series, my Die For Me series, because I'm writing another novella for it, and I wanted to change things in books that had already been published for 2 years. It was very frustrating. For me, the hardest part is I love doing what Aprilynne does in that I kind of am thinking about things all day, like, thinking about how something's going to work, what I'm going to do when I put my fingers to keyboard. But it's very hard for me to actually sit down and get into it. And then once I'm in it, it's fine. But I have a very hard time concentrating. And I have to use that freedom thing on the internet where you cut your internet off for a certain amount of time. And I'm very much into the living in my worlds in my head, but having to force myself to sit down and translate it into words is hard for me because my brain is all over the place. So I would say that that's the hardest part, is sitting down, concentrating, and getting into something, which is kind of on an everyday basis.
Right. The next question is, what are you working on now?
I'm working on the sequel to Dorothy. Oh, sorry. Hi, Amy. I'm working
Go ahead, Danielle.
Yeah, I'm just working on the sequel to Dorothy.
I'm working on, I have the copy edits for the second after the end book, which is now called Until the Beginning. All of my titles are really vague, so they're really hard to remember. So yeah, that I've got copy edits on that. I've got like 11 days before they want that back, and I haven't started yet. And then I'm doing a novella, my second novella that goes with the Die For Me series. This is also written from Jules' point of view, who was the guy, he was the secondary guy, but everybody fell in love with him. So I'm now writing 2 novellas. I'm already done with one, another one from his point of view. And then I have a few ideas that I'm hoping to turn into series, and I'm kind of working on the pitches for those right now.
I am working on the 3rd Earthbound book, and I am also about halfway done with the book about a near future society that mirrors the court of the Sun King in Versailles from the 1500s. So all the technology, all the corsets, all of the pretty dresses.
I like pretty dresses.
Yeah, that sounds
visit in April, and I'll go to Versailles with you.
Oh, I want to go to Versailles.
I know, I'm jealous. I am supposed to be working on the 3rd taking, but and I'm waiting on copy edits for the second one. But I have been enjoying really having the summer off for the most part. It has been, I feel like I've been doing so much. Like I had 2 series each year for so long. It's just kind of, this has kind of been my first lull in my schedule for so long. I've kind of been taking the entire summer off. We've traveled. We've just kind of hung out around the house. I'm doing my taxes right now. That's what I'm working on because I'm late on my 2013 taxes. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, the next question is, do you have any favorite authors or favorite books?
I will read anything that Leah Sipus writes. Anything, including her grocery list. I fell in love with her first book, Mistwood, and it is just the most perfectly executed twist ever. It's one of those twists that makes the entire book suddenly make sense, and you don't see it coming, but as soon as you read it, you're like, of course, how else could it happen? And I love that book. I'll read anything that she writes.
Yeah, I love Holly Black's Curse Worker series. Her book White Cat. The whole series is awesome, but it starts with White Cat, and she is an amazing world builder, and I'm so excited to see what her and Cassandra Clare are doing with their middle grade series. Is it the Iron Trial? Their new middle grade series that they're teaming up on that comes out this fall, and she's just incredible. She's one of the most brilliant young adult writers, and just world building alone, but it's an amazing book, the Curse Workers series.
For me, I love Sender, Marissa Meyer series. I think it gave me a lot of inspiration for writing Dorothy, just the idea of doing a retelling, and it just really worked for me. And Labor Dargo's Ruin and Rising, I'm reading now, the Shadow and Bone series, which I think she has amazing world building too. I love her.
I love magical realism, and if you can mix magical realism with history, I go crazy for it. So I just recently read The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, and really loved that book. That was my... What?
I agree.
Oh, you want to read that? Yeah.
I've already read it. I love it.
Oh, you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if it's because I'm in France, but I have a couple seconds delay hearing everyone. But yeah, I loved that book. That was it's a huge book. It's like this fat, and I immersed myself in it and lived in that world for a couple weeks and really loved it. So that's one of my recent favorites. And then my childhood friend, Lou Anders, has just come out. His book is just about to come out. It's a middle grade book called Frostborn, and it's part of a series that he's done called Thrones and Bones. And it is so much fun. I love the characters in that book. I've read the first book only. But I highly recommend it. It's a great middle grade read. And my favorite person in the book is this half giantess, half human, who feels too short to be a giant and too big to be human. And she kicks ass. She is awesome. So she's definitely my favorite heroine of my recent reads.
Okay, the next one is, I'll select it here. How do you come up with the names of your characters, like Juno?
I came up with Juno. I actually, when I was thinking of this girl living in the wilderness, and thought that it was going to be in Alaska, started thinking about Alaska, I thought right away of naming the children in the book after towns in Alaska. So all of the children are named after towns in Alaska. Their parents said it was to commemorate these extinct towns in an extinct world. But basically there's Juno, her best friend is Kenai. All of the children are named after the towns in Alaska. So that was kind of easy. That went along with the plan for my book. Whereas in my Die For Me novels, I had a lot of French names that I wanted to use, but my American friends who were reading the first drafts said that they couldn't even pronounce them. And I thought that was probably a bad thing for readership. So I'm trying to think of one in particular. Oh gosh, they were all, well, first of all, Kate was named Tallulah, and I love the name Tallulah, but it just didn't go with her personality. And then, yeah, all of the French characters had these complicated names that nobody could pronounce. So yeah. I had to go back and change them to easier things like Vincent and Jules and all those, Jean-Baptiste. So yeah, that's how I came up with the names for my characters.
For me, I already had them. I mean, they were all from Oz already, so I just used what was there, and then I had to think of names that sounded like they belonged in Oz. So I named a goth munchkin Indigo. I named the cute boy character Nox. I just tried to find word names that sounded like they fit.
I tend to be a fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants namer as well. Just what kind of comes and seems to fit. I have had to do some research for names. Like Laurel, I wanted her to have a plant name in Wings, and I looked through a lot of plant lists of plant names and flower names and stuff. And then I actually, because I do have my book that I'm working on that is set in France, I have been on a lot of France baby name websites. But I spend a lot of time on baby name websites, or just kind of doing, like Danielle said, what seems to fit. And I've come up with a lot of my best names, or the ones that I think are the best anyway. They just kind of fit. They settle on the characters, and then you can't imagine them being anything else.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on baby name websites and trying to decide which name fits which character. Sometimes a character will just kind of name themselves. The name will just come to me, and I'm like, yes, that fits that character. And then, like for the Body Finder series, I had decided that all of the dead girls, I went around to all of my nieces and said, who wants to be a dead girl? And I was all of my nieces and all of my friends' teenage daughters all wanted to be dead girls. So all of the dead girls in the Body Finder are names of my friends' daughters or my nieces. I had one niece, only one person opted out. One of my nieces didn't want to be a dead girl, so she got to be the snotty popular girl. But it's funny, every book kind of, you do it a little differently for every book.
The next one is the artwork that is on the finished copy. Was that the first cover that it had, and do you like it?
So can I tell you
I'll
a funny
answer that.
story?
I was just looking. Oh, sorry.
Who wants to go first?
Kimberly, you go.
I was going to tell a funny story about the Body Finder cover because when I first showed my Body Finder cover on kind of a closed loop that I was on of new authors, I got a funny email from Aprilynne, and she said, hey, I just wanted to tell you because she sent me an image of actually her original Wings cover, which they had used. The flower for the Body Finder is actually this like 3-foot fabric creation that they were originally going to use as wings, real wings on a girl for Aprilynne's cover. They actually shot it with the wings, and it was designed, I think, by Victoria's Secret cover designer, wings designer.
These ones.
The wings for the Victoria's Secret angels. And so they had shot this cover for Aprilynne's book, Wings, and then they decided not to use it. And so they had repurposed the wings into the flower for the Body Finder.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Mine, I didn't, it was the first cover that, oh, you were going next, Amy, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You're fine.
Yeah, mine, it was the first cover I saw. It's Ray Chappelle. I love it. I think it's adorable, and there was no other design.
It's really strong. I love it too.
Yeah, I love it. I felt like I lucked out.
It's a great cover.
For After the End, they actually, it's funny, they'll ask me what I think about something, and they do kind of listen to what you have to say, but then they go with what they want. So I've always felt like I have a little bit of input. So I say everything that I want, and know that they might take a few little details. So I think I asked them to put a red jacket on Juno. They came in with the clouds first. That was the first thing that I saw, and the cloud effects that they did on that cover is really beautiful and striking. So it kind of takes, yeah, you can kind of see it there. It adds a magical element to the cover, and that was really necessary, I think. So I was really happy with that cover. There were only a couple things that I asked them to do. Whereas the cover for the next one, the sequel to this one, we've gone back and forth a few times. The backdrop is really beautiful, but the people didn't look right. And they keep changing the guy, because the guy will be on the cover this time. They keep changing him, and the last incarnation was like hip-hop Miles. And Miles were kind of low on his butt. And I was like, no, that's hip-hop Miles is just not going to work. So, yeah, it's funny. I don't know how much input everybody else has. They'll ask me some things, and I know that they're kind of listening. So I feel like I have a tiny bit of input, but there's not much. Luckily, I've had wonderful cover artists.
The clouds on that is so pretty. It's gorgeous.
It's really stunning. Yeah.
Wait
till you see the next one. It's really pretty too.
I've been super lucky with mine. This is the image that they first gave me, and they were like, I mean, it was just a photo when they gave it to me, and they're like, imagine the hair like all in the letters, and I was like, cool. So,
It's pretty
I don't really have much of a story except that they gave me a cover and I loved it right off, and you know, who could go wrong with purple?
Let's see. The next one is, when did you decide to become a writer?
I think I wanted to be a writer since I was born, maybe. I wanted to write since I was a little kid. I think I was writing little stories with my parents, and we had those little cloth-covered ones that you do in first grade. It was like the first story that I got to publish, and I was so excited. I've wanted to write forever. I went from wanting to be a journalist to doing soaps. I used to write soap operas for a while, and now YA, and I've always loved it.
I've been writing for as long as I can remember, and so, of course, whenever anybody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said a doctor. So I really did not catch on very quickly, and I actually started college in pre-med and found out that science and I do not get along quite as well as I hope. And so after getting a couple of C's, I was like, maybe this isn't really the way to go. And I did switch to creative writing at that point. And it was probably 2 years after college that I started my first book. But that was really, I guess, the moment when I was like, oh, no, I should go into writing, because I've always written, and writing has always been what I've done and what I've always done in my spare time. And, oh, maybe I should actually, do that.
Yeah, I actually started out wanting to be, of all things, a foxy lady trucker, and that was my real aspiration in the sixth grade. In the seventh grade, there was, in the 70s, there was this TV show called BJ and the Bear, and I wanted to be like all the ladies on the show, and they were these foxy lady truckers, and they had boyfriends in every city, and I had this whole plan laid out because I was going to have a German Shepherd that rode shotgun with me because he was going to have my back, because foxy lady truckers would need to have a tough dog to have their back. And fortunately for my mom, I started 7th grade and we had electives in school, in junior high, and for my elective I took journalism. She was really worried about me being a trucker. And so I took journalism and realized that I really loved writing. And I didn't necessarily, journalism, I loved journalism, I loved writing, and eventually I took creative writing and realized that I actually liked that more. And so all through high school, I was copy editor of our yearbook. I took creative writing and I wrote my first novel when I was 20, and it was horrible, but I learned how to start and finish a novel. I learned how to revise. I learned all those important things, even though it was god-awful. And, just stuck with writing ever since. It took me forever to actually publish, but, stuck with it all through those years when I was getting married and having babies and doing all those things. And I did not ever become a foxy lady trucker.
Oh.
Sad.
You still have time, yeah.
Yes.
You can still do it, Kimberly.
I just want to follow up on what Kimberly said about first book. I don't know if April and Danielle had the same experience, but I'm glad that my first book was never published.
Me too. I'm glad mine, not yours. But
at the time, I was like, "This is the best ever," and now I look back at it, I'm like, "Oh, thank God nobody ever saw that book." I grew up loving books. I have always loved books. I had a kind of traumatic childhood, so books were always my escape. And I when I was young, I wanted to either be an astronaut or a librarian. So I guess the only thing I can see commonality is like that you're stuck in a small space, enclosed. But librarian's much more exciting, I think. Anyway, so I have always read. I need books more than I need food. It's an obsession to me and a necessity. And I had always written, but around college age, I decided I had gotten some rejection from the school journal, literary journal, and I decided that meant that I wasn't any good. So I gave up and kept on writing letters because people wrote letters back in those days. And I would write long letters talking about, telling my grandmother what it was like to live in France, and really, like 10-page letters. I should have known that that something was going on. And when I decided to get my master's, I did it in art history, and loved that. Was writing articles on paintings. I was doing a lot of writing, but nothing. Well, it was creative, I guess, but it wasn't fiction. My first book was a book about living in the French countryside, and it was part fiction, part reality, funny, and it was an okay book. I'm still glad nobody read it. But Die For Me was actually the first time I tried fiction. So I had launched into some kind of horror type of thing that didn't work out, and then went from that to Die For Me, and kind of haven't looked back since. But I got to it rather late in life. I guess I was 40 when, I was 40 when I started writing kind of in earnest. So.
Yeah, for me, I wrote scripts like every week for a soap opera, so it was like writing in someone else's voice, and it was just so much fun. But it was a good training ground for me because I did start writing pretty early, but it was just a lot of fun writing for a lot of different characters, writing for things that were very unbelievable, but trying to make them seem believable. So that was really, I think, good training for the YA.
Okay, the next question is actually from YouTube, and it is for Kimberly. She wants to know, can you ask Kimberly how she came up with the idea for The Taking?
The Taking actually came. They all come in different ways. I think it was Amy who said all of her ideas come in different ways. For me, The Taking came. It was a very visual thing. I had this it really started as just an image. All I had was this image of this girl. I saw her coming home from some kind of sporting event, and she was a teenage girl sitting in the back seat of her car, which she was only with her dad, so I wasn't sure why she was in the back seat of her car, and it was night, and there would be a flash of light, and then she would be gone. And that was it. That was all there was at first, and I kept picturing this over and over, and trying to imagine what it was about this girl. Why was she in the back? First of all, why was she sitting in the back seat when she could perfectly well be sitting in the passenger seat? What it was about her, what the flash of light was, where she had gone, and what happened to her. Then what the story was afterwards, what the story was before and what was after. And so I kind of ruminated on that for a while to decide what that story was. And one of the things I really kind of wanted to do was take this golden girl character, which Kira is in The Taking. She has it all. She has a perfect family. The two parents who adore her. She has a potential softball scholarship waiting in the wings because she's a championship pitcher in her high school. She's got a boyfriend that she's had since middle school who she adores. And then I just wanted to take her and tear her apart. Like, I just wanted to rip her world apart and watch her come back 5 years later, and everything's different. Her parents are now divorced. Her mom's remarried. She has a new little brother that she doesn't even want. Her boyfriend's gone off to college with her best friend because everybody's had to go on. They've had 5 years to process that she's been gone, and she's had what she thinks is one night. And so she has to I wanted to see if she could rebuild where she would have to go from there. And so it was really fun to kind of watch her try to imagine what 16-year-old girl, how they would process that information and try to rebuild from there.
Okay, this one is from Google+, and it is from One Guy's Guide to Goodreads. He has a shout-out to Kimberly and Danielle that he met you guys in St. Louis during the Dark Day tours. And that he wants to know about any information that you guys can give on The Taking Part 2 and The Witch Must Die.
The
Taking 2.
Oh, go ahead, Danielle.
No, I was saying you go first, Kimberly.
Oh. The Taking 2. I was gonna say I actually was really jealous, Amy, that you got to drive to Utah because mine actually takes place in Utah. And so I would have liked to have been on your road trip with you, so I could take notes too. Yeah. So in the second Taking, I'm basically I can't give too much away. This is hard because I can't give too much away. I left Kira in a really. She's basically now lost everything all over again. She has lost everything that she kind of regained and built back up. I basically pulled the rug out from under her again, and she's going to have to kind of start over. And she's basically on a road trip now to kind of put the pieces back together again. And I can't really say too much more. I don't know how much to say. She's kind of struggling with what defines what a person really is now, and trying to find out if her family, if her dad and Tyler are really out there. That's vague, isn't it? I'm all about vague today. I'm just gonna be
I'm going to be more vague than you are. The Witch Must Burn actually is another novella, because I did a novella before the first Dorothy, and it's going to tell you more about the witches in the past. And I can't give any more than that. It'll be out on November 11th, and the sequel to Dorothy Must Die is going to come out in the spring, and it's going to pick up with the cliffhanger from the first book. And I really, really, really am not allowed to say anything. I think the title and the cover will be out in about a week and a half, and that's all I'm going to say. See, more vague than you. And I think that's Ethan, so hi, Ethan.
Yeah, he said his name was Ethan.
Yeah.
The next one is, what was the hardest... Oh, wait, we already did that one. Which of your books was the most fun to write, and which one was the hardest?
I can answer which one was the hardest. For me, the hardest one was Desires of the Dead, which was the second book I ever wrote under contract. And it was like pulling freaking teeth. I don't know if it's what some authors call the sophomore slump, or I felt so much pressure after The Body Finder to write that second book. And I don't know if it was because the first one was so, I don't want to say easy, but because maybe I'd written the first one not under contract, I felt so much pressure to live up to readers' expectations, to live up to editors' expectations, to have it fit into the Body Finder format, but to not be formulaic. There was all this pressure I felt with the second book, and so when I turned it in, I agonized over it forever and then turned it in. And Aprilynne, when you said a 10-page single-spaced letter, I think mine must have been 20 pages. It was awful. It was such a hot mess. And I think we went back and forth in revisions like 4 painful times. It was just terrible. And I thought, oh my gosh, everything I thought I loved about writing, I really don't love. And I was sure I was going to have to throw in the towel after that book. And fortunately, then the third book I wrote, which was The Pledge, was a piece of cake. I loved writing that book. It might have been my favorite book just because, for the simple fact that I think it brought the joy back to writing again.
I'd agree with Kimberly. The second book is the hardest for me, and it's only my second book, so because I'm the newbie here. But I think it's so. I was on tour trying to write, and I couldn't write that week. I just remember it. Oh, wait, I think we're cut out. Can anyone see anything?
It says live up in the corners.
Yeah, I don't know what's, yeah. Yeah, but for me, the second book is the hardest. I'm still struggling through the end, but I think just trying to pick up where you left off and also doing the promotion stuff while you're writing, I think it makes it a little harder. Because your head's in the first book and in the second book at the same time.
I agree with the second book, the sophomore slump thing that both Kimberly and Danielle have said, because for me, I had shock. My reaction when I got my first letter for my first book was such shock. I was in shock. First of all, I didn't know that anyone was going to buy this book. I didn't think that they would. I didn't know any other authors at the time, so I didn't know what the standard kind of procedure was. And basically, Harper bought my book, and I thought, okay, great, maybe make a couple little changes, and then it's published. And when I got Twitter changing everything I had written, I thought, but why did they even buy my book? They could just write it themselves, So it was such a shock to me. I really was not expecting it, and it scared me so much that I was afraid to write my second book. I just thought, I saw the way that they had kind of edited my first book to like make the plot faster, to do different things, and I was paralyzed. I didn't think I could write the way that they wanted me to, and I finally got to the point where I was like, I'm just going to have to write what I want. I can't think about what they want me to do. I can't think about the edits that they made on the first one. I wrote exactly what I wanted to do. And I have to say, In fact, I think the first edit letter was 18 pages long, and the second one was only 11 or 12. So I was like, yay, I did something right this time. But it was really a feeling of being paralyzed and not, you know, I was so afraid of not living up to expectations, both from my editor's point of view and from my reader's point of view, that it really made that the hardest book that I've ever written. And probably the easiest would be the first one, because as I said, I was kind of just writing it for fun, really not thinking that anyone would ever buy it. So there was no pressure at all. I did exactly what I wanted to do, and had a lot of fun with it. So that was probably my favorite.
My favorite one to write was Life After Theft, because it was a book that I didn't know if it was ever going to sell, and I kind of started it. I started it before Wings, actually, and then I wrote on it for literally over 5 years. But it was super fun, and I liked the characters, and I would just like pull it out between edits, and it was kind of a nice, refreshing thing to, like a palate cleanser. The hardest one to write was actually Earthbound, because I had an editor by that point, and I was starting a new series, and I had to like send in pitches, and then I had to turn in the book at 50 pages and at 100 pages, and when it was done, and I felt like there were so many fingers in the pie, and I mean, like I was kind of pulling this idea out of this pitch that I hadn't really even thought through, and by the time I got done with it, I really loved it, but starting it was really hard because I was like, I'm just trying to make a story out of this pitch that I didn't actually think very hard about, and I felt like I was pulling it out of a black hole, but once I did, I really loved it, so it worked out okay.
Did we lose Jessica?
I don't see her
No,
anymore.
I'm still here. I'm still here.
I think you're just a little dot now on my screen. I don't know.
I turned my camera off because my 3-year-old was coming in and she wanted cookies.
Oh.
I was like, nobody needs to hear that. Okay, the next one is, where are you guys from? I'm in the Seattle area. I was born and raised in the Seattle area.
I was born in Ohio, raised in Georgia, and I came here for college, New York. So I've been in New York for a long time.
Ohio.
I'm in Phoenix, and I wasn't born there, but I was raised here.
I was born, well, not born. I was born in Oregon, grew up in Alabama, and have been living between New York and Paris for most of my life.
See, I was wondering why you didn't have an accent.
Yeah. Living overseas, you have to correct your accent because no one understands you.
The next question is, if you could write with anyone, who would it be?
Madeline L'Engle, but she's dead, so too late.
I was going to say, alive or dead?
Yeah. Alive. Let's go with alive.
I don't play well with others, and so I'm like, if I could write with anyone, what about if I had to write with someone? Because I think that if I wrote with someone I liked, it would totally destroy the friendship.
Yeah, I don't want to write. I could never do those writing duo things. I would be so upset if someone went over the top of my writing and just wrote over it and changed everything. I know people who are fine with that. That's how Margaret Stoll and Cami Garcia write the Beautiful Creatures books, and I don't know if I could partner with somebody. The only way I could do it is staggered chapters. Like I write one chapter, they write one chapter, and we're responsible for our own parts and interweaving them that way. But I don't know that I have anybody I would just love to write. Well, Holly Black, I'll write with Holly Black. But we have to stagger chapters.
I would write with Marissa. Oh, go ahead, Amy. I keep stepping on you. Go ahead.
I don't even. Yeah, I think that I'm way behind or ahead of you guys. So sorry. I liked Good Omens, the book that Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett wrote together, and they did what Kimberly was just talking about, where it's staggered chapters. And one was living in England, one was living in America. One would write one chapter, and then the next person would follow up with their chapter without really having planned much ahead of time. And that appeals to me because I love playing word games and story games, and I love discussing people's story ideas with them and brainstorming. So I don't know how I would do with like trying to mix styles with someone, but I love the idea of creating a story with someone just through playing a game. Whether anyone would want to read it afterwards, I'm not actually sure about that.
I think I'm with Kimberly. I would not like to. I think I'd have to do the staggered chapters thing. I think I'm a little selfish. I don't think I could handle someone editing me. I've tried writing scripts with people before, and when you do that, you can just, each person's doing dialogue, and you can kind of do a conversation, just write it down. I feel like that works for me, but I could not share chapters, I don't think. So, but if I had to pick someone, I would think I would go kind of outside of YA and try someone who writes differently than me, but I love, like maybe Nick Hornby, like something fun.
I think that would really work out, like, since, I mean, you guys don't like writing with other people, but, like, if you had to, like, you could alternate points of view that way, because I know in a lot of books that I've read, that's really hard to have two separate points of view, so that if one person is writing one character and another person is writing another character, you really do have two completely different sets of, point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I have some friends right now who are doing that. One lives in England, C.J. Doherty, and the other lives in France and is French, Karina Rosenfeld. And they're collaborating on a book right now. And Karina's character is French, and CJ's character is British, and so it all works out really well because they're so different, and they're writing them from different points of view. So I can see something like that working out really, not easily maybe, but more easily.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is, how did you come up with the title?
I think for me, it just kind of popped into my head when I was thinking about Dorothy being evil, and it just stuck. So, and there was never another title.
Mine was actually a second choice title. The title was going to be Don't Close Your Eyes, which was like the most perfect title ever.
I love it.
They did Lisa McMahon's Wake, Fade, and Gone books into an omnibus called Don't Close Your Eyes. And not only are M and P close to each other on the shelves, but our books are also both about girls who can see the future and have to decide what to do about it, sort of, kind of. And so they were like, I don't think that's going to fly. And hers came out 6 months before mine. So we had to change it. So I am now taking my titles from the Hamlet soliloquy and in the Hamlet soliloquy and Hamlet. And so Sleep No More, and the second one is called Sleep of Death, and the third one will be a different line from that speech. But now instead of having it be the title, I write Don't Close Your Eyes inside the books when I sign it. So,
Cool.
I never come up with my titles. Nobody likes my titles, and except me. And so I have never come up with any of my titles. It's my editor who comes up with them.
Can you tell us one?
Yeah, Die For Me was going to be Sleepwalking. I love sleepwalking. I love that. They're like, that sounds boring. We don't like sleepwalking. But for me, it totally explained what my revenants, what my monsters were doing. They were walking in their sleep when they were dormant. And then it explained what my main character, Kate, was doing. With grieving her parents' death and then kind of just like making the motions. It made lots of sense, but it wasn't flashy enough. I used the word in each of my books. So sleepwalking, the word sleepwalking comes up a lot, just so I can have my say.
The Taking was originally called Taken, and then Harper very kindly pointed out that they had a book already called Taken by Aaron Bowman. And so we had to change up the title a little bit. So it became The Taking. But we went around and around. We actually, there were several titles back and forth, and The Taking just fit. So.
Okay, the last question of the day is going to be, let's see, we'll go with this one. Which character has been the most challenging to write?
I would have to say, for me, the characters that are hard for me to write are the bad guys, because I make them pure evil to start with, and don't give them any redeeming factors. I'm very unforgiving. So any of my bad guys, I have a hard time making them more balanced. I have them, yeah. Mine are like Darth. Well, no. I was about to say mine are Darth Vader-ish, but Darth Vader did have a heart. It's not the first couple movies. So yeah, my bad guys are my difficult characters to write.
And I love writing the bad guys. They're my favorite ones to write. I think they're the most fun to flesh out, and I don't even necessarily give them redeeming qualities, but I love writing them. I actually have a harder time sometimes writing the main characters because I don't want them to be so goody-goody. I want them to have flaws and faults, but I need them to be also likable. Like, it's walking that fine line sometimes of making them, giving them, you know, making them kind of defective, but not, you know, and a little snarky and a little, you know, making them human really is what it is, but not making them unlikable also. I want them to have real emotions and real thoughts because, you know, sometimes our thoughts are not always virtuous and kind, but also, you know, walking that line of making, you know, people feel empathy towards them.
I think for me, the hardest character to write was Dorothy, but also the most fun. But just taking a character that everyone loves and making her someone we hate was a little hard, and someone who's so iconic. So, but once I started doing it, I kind of just ran with it. But the first few chapters that she's in, I agonized over.
Similarly to Danielle, my most challenging character to write was also the most fun, and that's Kimberly from Life After Theft, because she's fun to write because she's really mean. She's not the heroine of the novel. People are like, well, she's the main character, and I'm like, that doesn't mean she's the good guy. And she was challenging to write because I needed the audience to sympathize with her, but at the same time, she's not nice, and she's not meant to be nice, and she's a mean girl. So trying to get people to still sympathize with this mean girl was really challenging.
Okay. We've got one more question. This is again from Ethan. I think this is a great question to end on, and it is that is there any one particular message that your latest book or novels that you want your readers to grasp?
For me, my After the End series, which is 2 books, the message, there is a really strong message, actually, and I didn't think about it ahead of time, but the message is don't believe what people tell you. Don't believe what you're raised to believe. Test everything out, and if you believe it yourself, then go with it. But it's basically, the messages in those books are find your own truth.
I guess I don't really think about my stories that way. I certainly don't intend to have a message. But I guess that kind of a theme of Sleep No More is to, you know, make your own decisions, to not just follow the rules that you've been told, but to follow the rules that you believe in. So I guess it's kind of similar to Amy's, that you need to decide for yourself what rules in life you're going to follow, not just what people tell you, but also not to just deny everything that people tell you because somebody else told you to do it. I mean, you need to decide which rules are good for you.
I think I would have to say I never go for a message either. I typically just write the story and what comes comes. So if I had to find a theme within it, I think there's so many different things. It's wicked versus good. It's all the stuff that it's a journey. It's trying to find yourself along the way and not trusting everyone, but figuring out who to trust. I think it's a lot like the original Wizard of Oz in that you're finding friends and you're finding loyalty and you're finding where your home is, whatever that is. So I think that's where I'd end up.
Yeah, and I would say kind of along, kind of what Danielle was saying is that I don't know that I necessarily have one particular message or theme. They're probably you could probably pull all of our books apart and find hundreds of them. But I think with The Taking, a lot of, I don't want to give too much away, but a lot of what I was going for with the series was that we aren't defined by, us as individuals are not defined by any one thing or what society says we are, that we are, that my main character is struggling with trying to decide what actually makes her who she is, and is it just what everybody tells her she is, or is she more than that? So I think it's finding that individuality within herself and defining herself.
Thank you, ladies, so much for coming on. It was awesome. For those of you who are watching the show, I am going to share the link right now. It goes to the post for today that has the giveaway on it with all of the authors' links and about the books and buy links for the books to Amazon, and as well as today's show is embedded in there. And we have 3 copies of Sleep No More to finish, 1 ARC. We have 2 finished copies and 1 ARC of Dorothy Must Die, and then 2 finished copies of both After the End and The Taking, which this one's signed, and so the both copies of The Taking and Dorothy Must Die are signed. And I have book plates for After the End. I've got a whole bunch of swag as well. So thank you, ladies, so much for coming on again.
This was so much fun. Thank you.
This actually worked out a lot better than this recast. It worked once everybody got on here. It was fine. Woohoo! And if you guys ever decide to want to come back, just give me a ring.
Thanks so much, Jessica. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. It's good to see everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
And next week, we will again be on here, and I will post the link to that as well as soon as I find it in my Facebook over here. This is still going to get this is going to take a little getting used to, and I keep clicking the wrong thing. Next week, which is August the 9th, we are going to be having on authors Vivi Barnes of Olivia Twisted. I actually don't have them with me right this second, but you can see them behind me. Olivia Twisted from Vivi Barnes. The entire Code of Silence series from Tim Shoemaker, as well as authors Lori Langdon and Carrie Corp of Dune. They will all be coming on, and I have copies of each book, and you can see them behind me there. I actually have 3 full copies in hardback of the Circle or the Code of Silence series, which is right there. 2 of Dune and 2 of Olivia Twisted. So definitely tune in next week. And if you are in the mood, you can come back in 30 minutes and listen to Book Babble. So I will catch you guys later. Bye. Thank you for tuning in.